Okay, students, we're starting chapter 5. So again, we're still working with lines. So the first section is write linear equations in slope-intercept form. So you were introduced to that in chapter 4. So remember that a graph of an equation in slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. Okay, right here is a line with a slope of m. M is always a slope, or the rate of change if we have a word problem, and a y-intercept of b. Okay, so that's b is where the y-intercept is. You can use this form to write an equation of a line if you know its slope and y-intercept. So you have to know the slope or be able to get the slope, and you have to know the y-intercept. So let's start with one real super simple. Okay, so I'll do a couple where they give you the slope and they give you the y-intercept. So the slope, another way to write slope, remember they might just say m equals -2. That's a shortcut. I wrote it out, but if you see m equals something, that means slope, and then they might just say b equals 5. So that could be the shortcut version of what I've just done. So we know that it has to look like this. Alright, so we know the slope is what? -2, right? So y equals -2. Put that in front of the x, and then we know that the y-intercept, that's the point that passes on the y-axis, is +5. So there is your answer right there. It's as simple as that. So let me make up another one. Okay, so say I have a slope of -1/3 and my y-intercept is +2. Okay, so how do we write that in slope-intercept form? So we just plug in to y equals mx plus b, and we know that the slope is -1/3 times x, remember I always write the x on top, plus 2. And there is an equation. Very, very simple. If they give you the slope and the y-intercept, it's super, super simple. So let's go ahead and look at a graph right now and see if we can determine which equation fits the graph. So I just want to show you, I don't want you to see the answer, so I'm covering that up right now. So let's just go ahead and look at what it's asking. Alright, so we're covering this part up. Let me move that. Okay. So say you have this graph right here, and you have a multiple choice here. It says which equation represents the line shown. Alright, so remember, to write this in slope-intercept form, we have to know the y-intercept and the slope. So first of all, can we see the y-intercept? Hopefully you can see it's right here. Whenever x is 0 and you have a number here, that's a y-intercept. So we know the y-intercept is 3. Okay, so that means whenever you have multiple choice, you eliminate what it can't be. So looking at A, B, C, D, it cannot be C and it cannot be D because their y-intercepts are 1 and 2/5. So now we're down to a 50-50. And that's how you always want to work multiple choice. Get rid of that which doesn't even make sense. Then secondly, look at the slope. The slope is negative. It's going downhill. They're both negative, so that doesn't eliminate. So either it's -5/2 or -2/5. So you have to pick the points that they have shown you that are very lined up perfectly. So we're going to use this one, and then over here, this hits right here between the cross here, right here. So you're going to pick this point and this point. So you can see that you're going to go down 2 and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So obviously it's -2/5. It's A and not B. All they did was twist it around, so if you got confused, you said 5/2. So it's fairly simple when you can count from 1 ordered pair to another ordered pair, you have the y-intercept, which you do, and you can figure out the slope real easy. And we've been doing that in chapter 4, taking an ordered pair and then counting to find the next ordered pair. So that should be very simple to pick the correct graph. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do here is we are going to, I'm going to cover this up again and use the graph and not show you. It says write equation. Hold on. I don't want you to see this right now. Write an equation of the line given 2 points. Okay, so remember, to write an equation I need to know the y-intercept and the slope. So do I know the y-intercept? One of the ordered pairs is 0, -5. The other one is 3, -1. So I already know that the y-intercept is -5. So I know that part of it. The only other part I need is a slope. So those are the 2 points, the 2 parts of the equation that I need is the slope and the y-intercept. I already know b is -5. I can see that this is a positive slope. It's going uphill. So I'm going to count from here to here, rise over run, to get the slope. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So it goes up 4. And then across here, 1, 2, 3. And it goes over 3. So that means the slope is rise over run, 4 over 3. So now, if I look here, now we can look at the answer. It matches what I said. There's your slope, and we know the y-intercept is -5, so we can go ahead and write the equation y equals 4/3 x minus 5, and there you go. So as long as you can get those 2 points, whether from a graph or they give it to you, you can go ahead and write an equation in slope-intercept form. So now, something different here. I'm going to write this out and we're going to work this together. Let me move this up. Okay, write an equation for the linear function f with the values f of 0 equals 5. There's one. And the other one is f of 4 equals 17. Alright, so watch that. That's all they give you, and they want you to write an equation in slope-intercept form. So this is going back to understanding functional notation, which we went over. So that means that looking at the first one, what's the x and what's the y? I hope you remember when we did functional notation, it looked like this. So that means this is the x. So the first one, the x is 0 and the y is 5. So I can say the first ordered pair is 0, 5, correct? Then if I look at the other one in functional notation, that's why you have to get familiar with either way. So whether they write it as an ordered pair, just like this, or they give it to you as functional notation, you understand that they mean the same. So the next one is going to be 4, 17. Okay, so there's your 2 ordered pairs. So do I have the y-intercept? I always look for that first, and yes I do. So I'm going to write it in this form, and I already know this part. The only part I'm missing now is to find the slope. So can I use these ordered pairs? They're not asking me to graph. Can I use the ordered pairs to get the slope? That's what I need. Hopefully you're going to tell me yes, we did rise over run, change in y over change in x. So label it if you have to. Here's the first x, first y. Here is the 2's at the bottom, meaning the second x and the second y. Okay, I'm going to change colors. So we need to get the slope. That's the last thing. Okay, so the change in y's over the change in x. So 17 minus 5, that is the change in the y's, the second y to the first y. That means I have to do the second x to the first y, divided by the x. So 17 minus 5 is going to be what, 13? And then 13 over 4. And that is the slope. So we're going to go ahead and put that in. Sorry, it's 12 over 4. That was my fault. Actually, 12 over 4. And then 12 over 4 is going to reduce down to 3. So always reduce it. So 17 minus 5 is 12. And 12 over 4 reduces to 3. So there is the equation. Y equals 3x plus 5. Alright, so that is not bad. Let's go ahead and maybe try, let's see, do they have another example of this? Okay, let's try this one real quick. Let's do one more of these in functional notation, just so you can see another one. Actually, look for my little eraser. Here we go. Okay. So here's another one. They say f of 0 equals negative 2. That's the first one. And then the other one is f of 8 equals 4. Alright, so they want you to write it in slope-intercept form. So always read the instructions. That's what it needs to look like at the end, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write it as an ordered pair, 0, negative 2, and the other one is 8, 4. You should be able to do that. You can see that you already know the y-intercept is negative 2. So I'm looking at y equals something, I'm looking at that, plus, I don't want to see plus negative 2, I'm just going to put b is negative 2, so I'm going to fill that in. So all I'm looking for is the slope. So again, you can label x, y, second x, second y. So I'm going to do second y minus first y. 4 minus negative 2. When I have a double negative, I put this in a parentheses to remind me to go ahead and change that to addition afterwards. Then the second x minus the first x, x minus 0. So that becomes 4 plus 2 divided by 8 minus 0 is 8. 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 divided by 8. We're not going to keep it like that. We're going to reduce it to 3/4. So the final answer is y equals 3/4 x minus 2. So there you go. You should be able to look and be able to change it to an ordered pair and use the slope formula to go ahead and find the slope, and then you have everything you need. Okay? Alright. Last one is a word problem. Okay, these are very common word problems where they use slope-intercept form to solve them. So I'm going to go ahead and put the writing to it, and then we're going to figure it out. Okay, so modeling a real-world situation. When a quantity y changes at a constant rate means the same rate. So it can't, this wouldn't work if the rate changed every month. This would work like, say someone's getting paid $15 an hour and it stays the same 15, then you can use this. So it has to have the same rate. Just like when we were looking at the cable, it was $60 every month, per month, meaning the rate's the same. So when a quantity y changes at a constant rate with respect to a quantity x, you can use the equation y equals mx plus b to model the relationship. The value of m, the slope, is the constant rate of change, and the value of b is an initial or starting value for y. So b in a word problem is the initial value. So we're going to go through and see. Alright, let's go through and do this problem. So we'll read it, then we'll work it together. So a recording studio charges musicians an initial fee of $50 to record an album. Alright, so that initial fee, is that going to be the B or the M? Hopefully you're saying the B. That's the initial fee, that's the y-intercept, that's the starting point. So studio time costs an additional $35 per hour. See that per? That means the same rate. That's your constant rate of change or your slope. So A, write an equation that gives the total cost of an album as a function of studio time in hours. Okay. So we want to use, they're saying cost, total cost. So we're going to be using C for total cost, and we're going to be using H for the time in hours, okay? So here, our time in hours comes first because you pay afterwards. So H is like your X and C is like your Y, okay? So let's look at this. I'm trying to put this up together so you can still see the problem and we can write it out. So let's go ahead and write out an equation that will take care of this. So the cost is equal to, so how much is the slope? 35, right? So 35 times H, because we're using H per hour, it says right here, per hour. Plus, what was the initial cost? You can see the initial fee they tell you was 50. So that is A. You have written an equation. It's real simple. You're going to see this over and over again. You just have to understand what the slope is and understand what the initial fee is. And if you read the word problem, you'll be able to figure it out pretty easy. Slope normally has per or the same rate or the same thing for 12 months, and you'll be able to figure out what the slope is. Okay, the B part. Find the total cost of recording an album that takes 10 hours of studio time. Well, here I have the initial function, so I just plug in for B. So they want you to find the total cost, so that means we're looking for C. When you record for 10 hours. So where H is, you put 10 plus the 50. So remember, when you enter into the recording studio, you always have to pay a $50 fee before you do anything. So that's always included. Just like when you rent equipment, they charge you a certain fee. It's so much plus so much per hour or per mile if you rent a car. So 35 times 10 is 350 plus the $50 initial fee. So the total that you're going to pay is $400. So that's your answer, $400. So you get part A, you get the equation so that you can answer part B. Okay guys, that's the end of 5.1. Not too bad, just work those problems.